Hey, quick question. When was the last time you thought about your city council? Yeah, that's what I thought. Good evening and welcome to Texas Talkin, the only show where local politics gets more attention than it probably wants, and politicians get asked the questions they were probably hoping no one would ask. I'm your host, Shiloh Platts, spirit animal of the Texas right, equal parts commentator, instigator, and occasional tour guide through the wild world of Texas politics. And tonight, we've got Port Arthur as our first stop. Now, if you're from Southeast Texas, you already know Port Arthur is one of those places that has everything it needs to succeed: industry, location, history, hardworking people. And yet, it never quite seems to reach its full potential. Why is that? Well, that's the question. Because it's not like Port Arthur lacks opportunity. You've got energy, shipping, economic engines that should be driving growth. But instead, what you often hear about is frustration. Frustration with leadership, frustration with direction, frustration with decay, frustration with the feeling that things just aren't moving the way they should. And here's where it gets interesting. Because cities like Port Arthur, elections aren't decided by millions of people. They're decided by a few hundred votes. A few hundred. Now, serving on city council isn't exactly glamorous work. No national headlines, no cable news appearances, mostly meetings, budgets, and trying to solve problems that don't have easy answers. But it matters. It matters a lot more than people think, because local government is where policy becomes reality. It's where decisions actually affect your streets, your schools, your safety, your economy, your day-to-day life. And when leadership isn't aligned with what the community actually wants, you feel it. Which brings us to Doneane Beckcom, a current Port Arthur City Councilwoman and candidate who says it's time to take a hard look at where this city is and where it's going. We're going to talk to her about the challenges facing Port Arthur, what she believes needs to change, and whether voters in May are ready to get more engaged in shaping their city's future. Because at the end of the day, folks, local elections aren't small. They just may feel small until the consequences show up. And by then, well, it's a little late to start paying attention. So before this race gets decided by a handful of votes and a lot of "I wish I'd voted," we're going to talk to someone who's right in the middle of it. Let's get dialed in. Well, she's a lawyer and she's also up for re-election as Port Arthur City Councilwoman. Joining us now is my friend Doneane Beckcom. Doneane, welcome to Texas Talkin.
Hey, Shiloh, thank you so much for having me on tonight. I appreciate it a lot.
It is my pleasure, and I'm very excited to talk to you about your re-election. Kicking things off, for those of our viewers who aren't familiar with you, who you are, your background, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great. Well, I was born and raised in Port Arthur. I left for a short time to go to law school, and my plan was always to come back home and to serve my community, Jefferson County primarily, but Port Arthur in the long run. And I've always had it in my heart to serve in an elected capacity. And I've been blessed to do that for the last 3 years, and I'm ready to do it for another 3.
I often tell people, and you don't have to agree with me here, you're up for re-election, but I often tell people you are the lone voice of reason on that council. Why don't you share with my viewers some of your key accomplishments over these past 3 years?
Sure. Well, when I came on council, of course, there were already a lot of things that had been established prior to my term of office, and I've picked up those things and kind of run with them. And probably the biggest one was a $67 million drainage improvement project that happened primarily in District 3, which is basically the northern part of Port Arthur. My entire district, minus a couple of neighborhoods, flooded during Hurricane Harvey. And we were blessed to get some funding from the federal government, from FEMA, to do a drainage improvement project that has completely changed the drainage in my district. Anytime that we would have even just a thunderstorm, the busy street that I live off of, which is Jimmy Johnson Boulevard, that most people in Port Arthur travel quite frequently, all of the homes and neighborhoods off of Jimmy Johnson flooded. Now we have no flooding. We can get a pretty severe thunderstorm and we have no street flooding. So that project has been completed. There's a few minor things that we're still doing in a couple of areas, but for the most part, it's about 97% complete and it's working. Thank goodness.
Excellent. So, what do you see as the most pressing issues right now in Port Arthur? What are you hearing from voters as you're out and about talking to people? What kind of change do they want to see affected in Port Arthur?
We have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be addressed, primarily our water infrastructure and our streets. That's what I hear from voters across the city, not just in District 3. So it's a citywide problem. We have a lot of infrastructure that is decades and decades old that needs to be replaced in our water system. We've made some headway with that. Unfortunately, we've had to raise the water rates a couple of times during my 3 years in office to try to help with that. Our streets, we work really hard to keep our streets in the best repair that we can. We have a pothole crew that goes around town making minor repairs as they can. And we've got what we call the streets program, where each council member goes around their district, finds the streets that are most in need of repair. And we get those lined up for engineering and design and to get those repaired. And I'm proud to say that the worst streets in District 3 are on the priority to be repaired during this fiscal year.
Excellent. I can tell you what I hear more often than anything is the crime issue, violent crime in particular.
Sure.
Port Arthur has been in the news many times about the crime problem. I think it's been ranked, among some of the most dangerous cities in Texas. I know you've said crime statistics have gotten better, and objectively they have. That's not what people feel. What would you say to voters who still feel like crime is such a problem in Port Arthur? And what, as a city councilwoman, could you possibly do to help bring about positive change in that regard?
Well, I have a really good working relationship with our police chief, Tim Duraso. Our career paths have gone kind of along the same path for the last almost 30 years. And he and I have a really good working relationship. He's got a really strong police force, and they are very in tune to the different areas of Port Arthur where we have different pockets of crime. Just like every city, there's certain parts of the city that have a higher crime rate than others. I'm happy to say that District 3 is not one of those areas where we have a lot of issues. But, some people probably saw on social media yesterday that there was a big fight at the Walmart on Memorial Highway and 365. We just have to address it as it happens, of course, but we also need to have some things in place, kind of like what the city of Beaumont is doing right now, where they've got some community leaders and some faith leaders involved, because it's got to start really in the home. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in Port Arthur as well. There's some programs that we're looking at as a city that I think can help combat some of the ways that people are feeling like the crime rate isn't going down. When in fact, if you look at the statistics over the course of the last 3 to 5 years, things really have gotten better in Port Arthur.
Now, elections like the one you're in are very often decided by not thousands, sometimes not even hundreds, but sometimes by handfuls of votes.
That's right.
Turnout has historically been an issue, low turnout, that is.
Yes.
In Port Arthur. What would you say to voters in your district who are watching this program right now about just how important it is to show up and vote? And when is the election? Most people may not even know that there's an election coming up next month where their city councilwoman is on the ballot.
Right. There's been a lot of voter confusion lately because there's been so many campaigns that are ongoing. We just had the primaries for the general election in November. There's a runoff coming up for some of those seats as well. I had people call me during the primary saying, I went and voted and your name wasn't on the ballot. Right. So there's been some confusion. But I think my voters, by and large, know that I work for them. My platform when I ran in 2023 is I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm a problem solver. And what city council members do is we help with quality of life issues. I deal with trash pickup and water leaks, and my water's been shut off. What do I do? My garbage can's broken. What do I do? My neighbor is having parties late at night. How do we combat that? So I work for the people with details of their quality of life that nobody else takes care of. You know, you can't rely on your county commissioner about your garbage pickup. You can't rely on your, representative or your senator for things like water leaks. It's the city council people. We deal with the minutia of daily life and those things that give you quality of life as a citizen. And I think by and large, my voters in District 3 know that that's what I do for them. And there's voters across the city that when they can't get the information they need from their own council member, they call me because they know I'm the one that will try to get their council member to step up to the plate. And if they don't, I'll deal with it myself and I'll get them to the right department and solve their problem.
Local politics are so important because they impact people, as you just said, where it hits home the closest oftentimes.
Yes.
So where do you need the most help? What can our viewers do to help you in your reelection, your campaign? Do you have a website that they might be able to go to if they want to get involved or perhaps reach out to you?
Sure. I'm doing a social media campaign. So if they go to Facebook and go to re-elect Doneane Beckcom, Port Arthur City Council, if they type in any combination of those words, my page will pop up. So I've got a social media blast that's going out every day, sometimes 2-3 times a day. And I want to emphasize that they need to get out and vote. In District 3, geographically, we're a very small district. But demographic wise, we have a lot of voters. We have almost 6,000 registered voters in District 3, and our turnout typically is less than 1,000 voters.
Wow.
And that's, that, like you said, we can lose an election by just a handful of votes.
That's right.
So I need all of my supporters and everybody in District 3 to come out and vote. And the early voting starts April 20th through the 28th. We do have one weekend that's in that span of dates for early voting. And then the election itself is on Saturday, May 2nd.
And folks, for those of you who say my vote doesn't matter, when it relates to national races, that may be the case in some instances. But
Right.
elections like this is where your vote can truly make a difference. Elections can be won and lost, as we've said, by a handful of votes. So I want to encourage everybody to get out there, vote early in this election. And I thank you for coming on tonight to talk about these issues because folks, I think, lose sight oftentimes of just how important local municipal races are to our community.
Right. I think people, especially in 2023, when I was running the first time, a lot of people didn't understand what does your city council person do for you? And I think those people understand now. City council is what's responsible for those day-to-day things that make life easier for me.
A lot of the kitchen table issues.
Exactly. My water bill isn't right. Who do I talk to? My heavy trash hasn't been picked up in a month. How do we deal with this? We have a lot of apartment dwellers in District 3, and I deal with a lot of landlord-tenant issues with our apartment dwellers, and I help them as best I can from a city council person perspective to connect with the right resources and services and things like that for different things that they need at their apartment complex. So it is, very much centered around the individual constituent and what they need at their property in their neighborhood.
Folks, if you want Texas politics broken down from a state level all the way down to a local city level, just like we've done tonight, I invite you to follow our page. Doneane, I want to thank you for coming on tonight and speaking with us for a few minutes. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas. Thank you for helping us keep Texas talking.
Thank you so much, Shiloh. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, ma'am. Stay dialed in to interviews and content just like this by clicking that follow button on my Facebook page, or hit the subscribe button to learn more about exclusive access that you won't want to miss.